Welcome to today's lecture on exploring positive youth development programs. So, individuals who are successful in working with youth are often quite intuitive in doing the right things, but rarely have or even take the time to think about the theoretical applications guiding their decisions. Throughout this class, you will be challenged to refer back to the foundations guiding this relatively new discipline and field of study. So let's take a look at why youth development is so important. Historically, the approach to youth development has changed dramatically, beginning with a view that youth development programs were simply aimed at fixing problems. Problems like teen substance abuse and pregnancy prevention programs were quite common in the 1970s. Later, there was a shift in focus in that youth development programs could move beyond preventing problems, but could grow by building skills within all youth. Such skills like responsibility, decision making, and communication are necessary to prevent problem behavior from occurring in the first place and are a mindset that became very popular in the 1990s. The current emphasis continues to move forward and evolve by actively involving youth in the design, delivery, evaluation of the programs that they themselves would likely engage in. So take a look at the quote at the bottom of the slide by Karen Pittman, in which she says, "Risk free is not fully prepared, and fully prepared is not fully engaged." This quote encapsulates all three historical frameworks in which youth were viewed. When you move through your assignments in this and future modules, consider how your activities might be adapted from simply problem elimination to youth engagement. To begin, here's a key. Start thinking about how your activities and programs include youth voice and youth autonomy. That's just a hint. While youth programs often appear to be simply a group of kids having fun or learning something, the quality programs are very intentional in their design and take place in many different contexts. Think back to your time involved in youth programs, and some of you may have been more involved than others, and that's okay. But when you were involved, from a youth perspective, you probably didn't notice that your programs, sports, classes were intentional in their structure. They provided opportunities for relationships and they promoted positive outcomes. From your perspective, you probably just thought you were having fun and learning. And that's the key. The best quality youth programs are those that can integrate these intentional processes seamlessly while the youth are simply engaged in having fun. So let's take a look at how programs become quality youth programs. First, a quality youth program considers all aspects of development and strives to provide an optimal environment for that development to take place. Youth are more than just their skills or their problems. We are whole units. Who we are is influenced by the context in where we live, who we live with, our cultures, as well as our local societies or communities. So, in order to focus on positive outcomes, a quality youth development program looks to bring out the best in each and every youth by striving to provide opportunities for growth and development, and in a way, create capable, compassionate, and contributing adults. So, as youth development professionals, we should ask ourselves, what does research and theory tell us about how education, child development, and youth development programming influences each other? How can we use this information to guide our efforts within youth development? Well, there are many different theoretical approaches within these fields of human development, education, and programming that influence quality youth program design. But first, let's talk about some terminology. Within the interrelationships of education, child development, and youth program, It is important to speak the same language when discussing theory and frameworks. On the slides, you will see the accepted terminology and how it applies to youth development. As a youth development practitioner and leader in the field, you should be involved with the decisions regarding the practice of youth development, which is preparing your staff to effectively lead the programs. You should be involved with the process, which is how the developing child is affected by or influenced by the program. And lastly, you should be involved with the philosophy and how the contextual features of a program identified as critical impact a child. So here is a visual model of the interrelationships of youth development. And granted, it is quite complicated. In youth programs, education focuses on the competencies necessary for adult success. So you'll see 4 competencies here: health and physical, personal and social, cognitive and creative, vocational, and citizenship. And these are deemed critical competencies in which a person needs to become a capable, compassionate adult. But within youth development programs, we also understand that youth have needs, and there are 8 needs that are listed here. Some are psychosocial, some are physical needs, such as safety, and these are generally quite common in youth development, known as the 8 essential needs. But then you also have the child development principles, in which this is, you got to look at biological and physical changes, cognitive changes, and psychosocial changes. It may be a tad bit off the mark here, but as you age, one of the things that happens that you may have thought of, may not have thought about, is how the brain changes. And this is just something of interest in mine, that as you grow, so does the brain. And there's this concept of plasticity in the brain, meaning that it adapts as you grow older. And so one reason that youth are sometimes linked all the way up to age 25 in males and females is because the brain hasn't fully developed until that age point. Now, sometimes with females it can be at a younger age, and males slightly an older age, so that's kind of an average. But within the prefrontal cortex is the concept of risky decision making. And if this part of the brain hasn't fully developed, one is more likely to make riskier decisions or engage in riskier behaviors. And this is a fascinating topic, and it's just kind of personal to me. And so this is something that occurs in the biological and physical changes as we move forward in our development. Just a side note, if you're interested, take a look at brain growth and plasticity for future readings. But that's just only on your own. It's just something that I find intriguing. So to get back on point, here's another visual, as this Venn diagram depicts the intersection of youth development, education, and caregiving. As you see all 3 of these come together, or when all 3 of these come together, that's when you see quality throughout your program. So combining elements of youth development, combining elements of education, and combining elements of caregiving. And this is what all youth development programs should strive to position themselves towards. So to summarize, as you start designing your youth programs, I'd like you to think about how the framework, the theories, and the principles are going to help guide your decisions. Remind yourself that youth programs take many different shapes, and who they serve and how they accommodate those that they serve may vary greatly. It is your job to draw from these theories in developmental psychology, as well as education and youth development, to understand and meet the needs of today's youth. And I'll add that understanding these ideas will also be influential in meeting tomorrow's youth as well. So here's our first attempt at developing our quality youth program. As you've read, you will see that youth development practitioners serve many different roles, sometimes simultaneously. So I'd like you to identify and describe 10 or more of these roles that you believe will be present in your program. In our first EOM, I am attempting to create community among the class and for you to meet your classmates. As in most online courses, it is quite common for students to feel isolated and unconnected. Therefore, I'm asking you to make a short video and answer the following questions. So, what are your interests and experiences within youth development? Secondly, based on your readings, what are 2 questions that you would like answered about youth development programming within this course? And finally, discuss some potential youth development programs that you might like to create, as well as list some of the things that you think are important to include when designing a program manual. This assignment is due Sunday at 11:59, and if you have any questions, remember to reach out to me, and I will be here to provide assistance. So to end this lecture, I simply ask, what is your role in youth development? As you come to answers to this question, I hope that it can provide you a guide as you move along the course in the decisions that you make in developing both your curriculum and your procedures manual. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you in the next lecture.